Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 3G podcast. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Podcast3G. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, and be sure to like and subscribe. On today's show, we are going to each rank our top 10 wrestlers of all time. None of us have shared our top 10 picks with each other, so this should be very interesting to see what we have in common, where we have them on our list. And this is where the 3G, which our 3G show is really named after the three generations of people that we are, right? So this will really hold true to that because, you know, I'm looking at it from probably the early 80s till now. And these two boneheads are looking at it from the 2000s or late, maybe. Well, Josh was born in the early
2000s.
Early 2000s.
About 2003, I would say.
And Cod B.
2012.
Yeah, so this is definitely going to be interesting, but it's historical, and you know, these two fine young men have both spent a lot of time on the network, and I noticed how you went from boneheads to fine young men. So
yeah, thanks for that.
In a span of 10 seconds,
you know, they've both been on the network watching historical stuff, so they may have some picks that are surprising to me and vice versa. So before we get started with our picks, do any of you guys have anything you want to preface it with, or should we just get going?
I think we should just mention that the criteria for our lists, this is not the top 10 wrestlers as in ring work. This is top 10 overall, the whole package, in-ring, promos, longevity, how they've managed to stay relevant, all that stuff. So it's not the list would be a lot different if it was ranking our top 10 wrestlers. This is our top 10 superstars, and
based on overall,
to their overall, the whole package. Yeah. And it's, I guess we want to call it WWE because some of these guys didn't start in WWE, but in one form or another they have ended up in WWE at some point.
Maybe not. Shaking
not?
his head.
Oh, maybe not. Okay, so scratch that then. It's not.
It's top 10 wrestlers of all time. If they happen to all be WWE, that's fine. If not, that's okay too. Again, these are our personal picks. I mean, they're not necessarily in agreement. We'd love to get feedback on this from people as well. So, with that, we're going to start at number 10, and we're going to go in order. We're going to go. Josh will start with number 10, then we'll go around the horn with B, and then me, and then 9 we'll start with B, then me, then Josh, and then 8 I'll start, and we'll just do it like that, and we'll say whatever we want about each other's picks, and we can laugh or joke or whatever reactions we have will be natural because we have no idea who we have on each other's list. So with that, Josh, let's start with your 10th, and these are in order.
Yes.
With your 10th favorite wrestling superstar of your entire life.
My number 10 is Daniel Bryan. So first of all, the main reason I picked Daniel Bryan is I don't think anyone would argue that he has the best WrestleMania moment of all time. Do you guys agree with that?
That is fair. I would say that his WrestleMania moment is probably one of, if not the best, and the build up to it was amazing. So I'll agree with you there.
We haven't seen that type of fan support behind somebody like that since that's happened.
What about Kofi Mania?
That's not even close to
if
what
you go
was
back,
Daniel Bryan.
I've gone back a few times.
I was joking.
Well, we don't know with you sometimes, but yeah, I've gone back and watched not only that match, but that era of Daniel Bryan, and that fan support is just unmatched. And besides that fan support, Daniel Bryan, he got started in WWE. He was with the Nexus. His start was a little rough. If you guys remember, he got fired.
Oh, yeah.
And
he got fired twice.
Legit fired.
Yeah, but once he got his footing, he's one of the best technical wrestlers in the world, I would say.
And he's also managed to stay fresh.
Yeah,
he always
reinvents himself. His character work is sometimes unmatched. Some people, character work on this list even can match him, but for the most part, his character work is unmatched. His wrestling, for the most part, is unmatched. And I think in the future, Daniel Bryan's going to be looked back at as a guys like Chris Jericho, Kurt Angle, guys like that. He's going to be in that same conversation.
You know, of course, doing it like this makes you rethink your own list.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, just think about this part of Daniel Bryan, too, is think about what he did. You know, he was never supposed to wrestle again.
Yeah, his comeback story.
You know, just think about his comeback, and then he did it all himself.
He was a good...
He fought for himself.
Absolutely.
And he was able to get himself back. So that's a good pick.
So it's my turn, right? Yeah.
Yep, go
So,
ahead.
Number 10.
I gotta check my paper here.
Your paper.
My number 10 pick is Mick Foley.
Mick Foley.
Wow.
Wow. Okay.
So, you look at all these characters he's had.
Dude Love, Cactus Jack,
Mankind.
Mankind, and Mick Foley.
That alone could get him on the list, but no. So, if all three of his characters win a Royal Rumble. That's not much, but that's good. He's a hardcore legend, maybe the best hardcore wrestler in history.
That's true.
He's gotten thrown off a Hell in a
He's
Cell.
involved in one of the most famous moments
The
in
most.
wrestling history.
I think it's the most famous moment in wrestling
That's,
history.
I would maybe agree with that. The most famous
If you ask
image in wrestling history.
If you ask a non-wrestling fan about that moment, they know about that moment.
I agree.
He's always been good with wrestling. He's had great feuds with a lot of people. That's my number 10. I think that he definitely deserves to be on this list. I have a lot of respect
That
for
is
him.
that is a great pick, and for many reasons, he deserves to be on one of our top 10s lists, and maybe he's on somewhere else on our list. Who knows? But great pick. He's the hardcore legend. He was the reason why the hardcore title was created in the first place. So, yeah, nice pick. So, my number 10, it may surprise you guys, is Randy Orton. And I picked Randy Orton because he is a next generation wrestler. He did come in with a lot of hype. To me, he lived up to the hype and then some. He came in, he was the legend killer, and he beat all the legends initially. He is a 13-time world champion. He's one of the best technical wrestlers, I think, for his time. I think he's underrated based on that. I think people take his ability for granted. His character along the way, I mean, it's been lately he hasn't really been in the spotlight, but when you think about Randy Orton at his best and most devious, he really got a reaction from the crowd, and he, to me, was always better as a heel, and he always, just think about some of the things he did during his career to his opponents, the psychological game that he played with people, and not to mention some of the best RKOs ever. I mean, just think about that Seth Rollins RKO at WrestleMania. Oh, yeah. There's so many, the AJ Styles RKO during their match.
Evan Bourne
doing, yeah. So RKO's off the ladder. Remember the
CM
RKO
Punk,
from
right?
Neville? When Neville was coming off the ladder.
Yep.
He pulled him and RKO'd him off the ladder.
He did that to CM Punk too.
He's done it to so many
I mean,
guys.
just so smooth, and to me, such a great character. I had to put him on my list.
Yeah, good pick.
Right,
Okay,
so
we're gonna
number 9 now?
Yep, number 9, go ahead.
So it's my turn. I gotta keep looking at my paper here because we're using my phone to record. Number 9, I have John Cena.
Okay.
He's maybe on your lists, maybe not, but he's a 16-time world champion, has held numerous titles, not a Grand Slam champion yet, still has to win Intercontinental. If you look at the PG era...
You say yet, like you think he will win the Intercontinental?
No.
Okay.
So take that back.
It's fine.
You
never
look at
know.
what he's done in the PG era for everybody, and he's definitely inspired a lot of kids. Personally, not me. I was never really a big fan of him, but respect is definitely due to him. And maybe his in-ring work is not the best. It's definitely good, but his mic work and his work to make people look good is definitely good.
Yeah, a solid pick. No doubt he is the image of a generation, probably
the
yours.
PG era, yeah.
Right, the PG era.
He started the Ruthless Aggression
He's done
era
a
too.
lot. He's got the most make-a-wishes out of any person in the world. He's done a lot publicly. He's gone through some character changes which have been interesting. Josh met him when he was a young kid. We went to meet John Cena.
We should talk about that one day on here.
Yeah, that was a fun experience. But yeah, that is a good pick, B. I think John Cena is probably one of the best overall superstars of all time, and definitely belongs on one or multiple lists.
I agree.
All right, so my number 9 pick is Roddy Piper. And I put Piper on the list because Piper was one of my favorites. There's going to be a few of my favorites growing up, just because Piper was that heel that, the crowd loved to hate. He played that heel role. He was always at odds with Hulk Hogan. He always had a stable with Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff and Cowboy Bob Orton and the Ace Bob Orton. Always had a bandage on his arm, and he was like Piper's, in Muscle Man or Enforcer, let's say. The Piper's Pit Show was amazing. When I was a kid, me and a friend of mine we used to reenact Piper's Pit in his basement. We used to do like the Piper Pit Show, and we always used to reenact the Jimmy Snuka coconut episode, which was a classic moment in wrestling itself. Piper had a long career back and forth. It's a shame that he did pass away pretty young, but Piper, I think, is a legend, and he's one of the greatest talents of all time.
All right, my number 9 pick is Kane.
Kane, that's like a...
Huh.
And that reaction right there is why he's on this list. I think Kane is one of the most underrated all-around superstars of all time. If you look...
I have a question for you.
Yes.
When we did throw this list together kind of quickly, when you were talking about there was a pick that you didn't know if you wanted to put them on there, was this Kane?
No, I was debating Daniel Bryan. That's why he was 10.
Okay, so keep going about
Kane. Kane, I think, just looking at character, Kane is one of the best. Character-wise, he's managed to stay relevant. The way he played his character when he first debuted he was so menacing when he debuted. He looked actually scary with his old mask. I think it was a little silly how, if you guys remember, he used to talk with like the robotic
My name
voice.
is Kane.
That was a little corny, but just him in the Attitude Era and aligned with The Undertaker, that was a great...
Brothers of Destruction.
That was a perfect role for Kane. And a lot of people don't like when Kane unmasked. I think that version of Kane was the most terrifying to me because I was still a little kid when he took his mask off. And I remember watching him in the storyline with Lita and Snitsky and stuff. And that whole era, Kane was pretty on top that whole era. And he's managed to stay relevant, change his character up just enough so he's relevant. I don't always agree with maybe like corporate Kane is not everyone's favorite. But
he's now the mayor of Knox County, Tennessee.
Yeah, and in the ring, he's always been able to do pretty agile stuff. And I still think even today he could put on a good match. And I just think he's one of the most underrated.
So my reaction wasn't because of, I disagree. It was because I overlooked it, right?
Yeah,
so,
I think a lot of people do.
So Kane is one of probably the best. He's definitely going to be a Hall of Famer. He's had a long career.
Yeah, and not to mention he's underrated on the mic too.
Yeah. And he's been, he's been in main events and he's held multiple world titles, and him and The Undertaker together, they're always going to be linked. So it's a good pick.
Fastest person to cash in Money in the Bank. He did it in 40 something minutes.
Yeah, like just go watch. Remember when he set JR on fire? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Just go watch that era of Kane. He was doing some good stuff.
He was scary, right?
Yeah.
Can't forget about Isaac Yankem too.
Well, that's when he was still trying to find his footing. All right, yeah, that's Kane number 9.
Okay. So number 8, and again, remember when a lot of mine are going to be from when I was a kid. So my number 8, and it's number 8, is Hulk Hogan, and Hulk Hogan was like the John Cena, but the John Cena like times whatever for my youth. I mean, Hulk Hogan was it, right? Everyone went to, when I was a kid and I went to wrestling, which was anytime it came to our area, it was to see Hogan. Everyone was there to see Hogan. Like, they would have all these matches ahead of time, but Hogan was like, he got amazing pops. He for the 80s, he played that part great. And then, he left the WWF at the time, went to WCW. His heel turn was good, but I think WCW could have did a better job with his heel turn. But then I thought he was really good in the NWO. Had a great run with the NWO. Came back to the WWE at the time. Then had a WrestleMania match with The Rock. And I don't think the intention at all was to have Hogan turn face again, but he got such a crowd reaction leading up to and during that match that he had to turn back to the face Hogan like the next night on Raw after that WrestleMania match with The Rock, which The Rock won, but I'd say 80% of the crowd was with Hogan. So Hogan is just like everyone in the world knows Hulk Hogan,
Mhm.
right? And I'm not just putting him on my list because of that. I'm putting him on my list because he was one of the draws for me for wrestling when I was a kid. He wasn't a good wrestler at all. He had a few moves, the big leg drop at the end, but he was probably the most, or one of the most, if not the most popular. He's part of the reason why the WWE is where it is today. There's no doubt about it.
Mhm.
Definitely.
Probably the only man that could take an elbow drop, a leg drop. He'd probably get his arm cut off and still stand up and Hulk up.
The Hulk up is the best, man. All right, that's my number 8.
My number 8 is Randy Orton.
Okay.
Basically, my pick for Randy Orton is some of the same reasons as you, Jimmy. I think he came in young. He was positioned with guys like Triple H, Ric Flair, legends, which boosted him a lot, in my opinion. I think he's managed to not only stay relevant, but stay smooth in the ring. And when he does reinvent himself, I've noticed with Randy Orton, when he turns heel, he does very diabolical and sick stuff. And then what happens is he gets over so much that they have to turn him face. And then when he turns face, he gets a little stale. And I've noticed that is kind of a cycle with him. But when he is heel, he's one of the best heels. I'm not a huge fan of him as a face, but I just think when you look at the perfect wrestler, I think this is a famous quote. I think JBL said this. If you could build a perfect wrestler, sports entertainer from the ground up, you just have to look at Randy Orton.
Yep.
The physique, the mic skills, the in-ring work, everything. He has it all. He's a superstar, and that's why he's number 8.
And he was on my list, so you're not going to get any flack from me.
All right, so it's
Yep.
my number 8 now.
You have nothing to say about Randy Orton being his number 8?
Not yet.
Okay.
So my number 8 is Chris Jericho.
Okay.
I chose Jericho because he is the reason I started watching wrestling. Royal Rumble 2012 came out. You guys were watching it, and I saw Jericho, and there was just something about him that made me like wrestling from then on. You look at his "You Stupid Idiot" and the List of Jericho gimmick. That is one of my favorite gimmicks in wrestling history. Very funny, and he can definitely has great mic skills and great wrestler too. He's done a lot of work in Japan, and he's had a pretty long career too.
And he's got a match coming up for the AEW
Yeah,
World Heavyweight Championship.
he's probably going to be the face of AEW for a while.
And that would make sense to build a company. And Chris Jericho is absolutely one of the greatest
And
of all time.
I don't think he's lost a lot of in-ring work ability.
I would agree. And he's close to 50 years old, so that's a good pick.
I agree. I'm going to not say anything else for now, but I agree.
So that would take us to number 7.
Number 7. My number 7 is Kurt Angle.
Okay.
So with Kurt Angle, I think his recent run may have soured some people on him a little bit, me included. I think his recent run was unneeded in the ring, and I'm glad he retired when he did. He should have retired earlier, in my opinion. But looking at his whole career, the way he transitioned into being a wrestler, a lot of people compare his rookie year to Ronda Rousey. I don't agree that Ronda was as successful as him, but he transitioned perfectly into a wrestler role. His style of wrestling is one of my favorite styles, with the German suplexes, the submission holds, stuff like that. He's always been a great character, funny and great on the mic. And not only his WWE run, but in TNA, I remember watching him in TNA a lot. And I think his TNA run was underrated as well. He had a lot of great matches in TNA with AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, and he's never been disappointing in the ring up until recently. So that's why he's number 7 for me.
So, great pick. And like you said, when he transitioned over very smoothly. His persona overall, I think, was great, right? He can play an idiot, he could play a good heel. His wrestling ability he's probably in-ring technical wrestler, one of the best.
In ring, one of the best,
Yeah,
for sure.
absolutely. Multiple-time world champion. And like you said, his last run wasn't the greatest run, but I don't think it really hurts his legacy that much.
No, I think he retired at a good point. He went out on top, I would say.
Yep.
Okay, so my number 7 is AJ Styles. Now, I don't think he would be on my list if you look at just his WWE work, but you look at his TNA work, his work in Japan and stuff. He's definitely one of the best wrestlers in the world. Currently, still, you look at the match he put on with Seth Rollins at Money in the Bank. I think that is the best match he's put on in WWE. Do either of you disagree with me?
He's one of the better matches.
He has some good matches with Roman Reigns in his early run, like
I think
after WrestleMania.
He had some
32.
good matches with John Cena too.
I was just gonna say,
Oh,
I
yeah.
think my favorite match my favorite AJ Styles match was, I don't remember which one, but one of those John Cena
Was
matches was great.
Was it the one that he lost the world title, Royal Rumble?
I think it might have been that one.
Yeah.
There was there 2 or 3? 2, I think.
There was one at SummerSlam and Money in the Bank too.
It might have been the Royal Rumble, but I'll have to go back and watch. But
Yeah, I did forget about that one, but I think the Money in the Bank one is still really good.
no, I agree.
Yeah, and he's definitely been able to keep a reaction from the crowd his
There-
whole time.
There's no denying AJ Styles is, to me, one of the best in-ring performers that we've had during this generation.
Is he the longest reigning WWE champion of the modern era, or is that?
Well, if you
CM Punk.
look at CM Punk, it would technically be CM Punk, but AJ's close behind.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, that's a good pick.
All right, so my number 7 is the Macho Man, Randy Savage.
My God.
Oh yeah. Anyway, so another favorite for me growing up, the Macho Man, came in during a time where there was just a lot, there was a lot of guys, the big guys wrestling, and the big Macho Man wasn't like the biggest guy. He was a very good technical wrestler. He had a great personality. He came in as a heel and was a top heel for a long time. His feud with Hulk Hogan over Elizabeth was great. He was okay in WCW, and then went on to actually do some announcing for a while. And then, of course, Macho Man tragically passed away as well in an accident. But to me, one of the great, his elbow is legendary as a finisher.
Yep.
He was a very unique person, and his persona was very unique. The way he talked was very unique.
The definition of charisma. Would
Yeah,
you say that? Yeah.
absolutely.
You have the Macho King.
Oh
that whole
God,
gimmick.
yeah, the Macho. I mean, just flashy. Just think about the time he wrestled and what he wore, how he presented himself.
So would you say he was ahead of his time?
I think he was
Yeah.
a little ahead of his time, and people hated him so much that they actually liked him.
Yeah.
That kind of guy.
Yeah.
I always loved him, no matter what. I didn't like him when he was a face. I always loved him better as a heel because he was able to play such a good role as a heel. So definitely one of the greatest of all time. Definitely growing up for me, it was very, very. He was one of the most entertaining for me, and I saw him several times, wrestle in person, and it was always great to watch, him live as well.
And I'm gonna have to go back. I've seen a few of his matches, but I'm gonna have to go back and really dig into his catalog.
Watch the I think it was WrestleMania. I want to say.
Are you
I don't know
gonna?
if it was 4 or
Are you gonna talk about the one with Ricky
3?
Steamboat?
Ricky the Dragon Steamboat
Yeah.
for the Intercontinental title. One of the greatest matches of all time.
I've heard about it a lot. I just gotta go back and watch it.
Yep.
Okay, what are we on? 6?
Yeah.
We
your
on
turn-
6
your
and
turn, B?
it's B.
Okay, so my number 6 pick is Kenny Omega. Now here we go with people that aren't in WWE and haven't been ever. Kenny Omega has the best finisher in wrestling, the one-winged angel. That's what it's called, right?
Yep.
All right. He's got a great theme song, a great gimmick. He's good on the mic. He's very goofy, I guess you could say, in real life. Like, he's a very nice person. He's definitely going to be great in AEW, and he was great in Japan. If you look at some of his matches with, I'm gonna not try to butcher this name.
Okada.
Yeah, Okada, I guess we won't say his first name. Some of the greatest matches ever. Dave Meltzer has rated those matches over 5 stars, actually. You definitely have to go back and watch some of his matches with
Yeah,
Okada.
I would have considered him for this list, but I didn't want to. I just don't think I'm as familiar enough with his best work as I should be, so I didn't want to put him on here and then not be able to talk about him enough.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with Josh. I mean, I hear so much great things. I've seen some of his matches, but I think if we come back and do this list again in a couple of years, maybe he would be on my list too after we watch him in AEW for a while.
Mhm.
But there's no doubt he is one of the best wrestlers in the world. currently. So that is a good pick. So nice pick there. So my number 6, again going back a ways. A couple of my picks, you guys are gonna be like, "Wow, that's a weird spot to have this person." But my number 6 is Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig. To me, one of the best technical wrestlers of his time. Talk about, a charismatic, like, attitude, right? I mean, he was so arrogant and just the way he presented himself. Multi-time Intercontinental Champion. He had some great feuds with people. Bret Hart being one of the people that he had great feuds with. Great technical wrestler. I loved the Perfect Plex, right? That was his finisher. His entrance where he would throw the towel around his back, slap his gum away. Just for the time, just a great character. Managed by Bobby the Brain Heenan for a while, which was a really great combination. And if we ever do a manager rating, Bobby Heenan will be on my list. But Kurt Hennig during his time was a great heel. I don't know that he was ever a good guy. I don't think he was. I don't think he would have ever been a real good guy. But definitely one of the best technical wrestlers. He had some great technical matches with Bret Hart if you go look at his history. And he was very good on the mic. If you go look at some of the vignettes he did where he was throwing himself the football and catching it, throwing the basketball over his head or half court and making the baskets. Like, for that time, those things were awesome, and he would just always end it with absolutely perfect. So that's why Mr. Perfect is on my list.
Yeah, it's another guy I'm going to want to go back and familiarize myself with his work some more. My number 6 pick is Triple H. I don't really know what you could say about Triple H. I think
you say a lot about Triple H. 14-time world champion.
What hasn't been said already?
Part of two of the part of the Hall of Fame faction DX. Evolution could be a Hall of Fame faction.
So I guess I should have said I don't know where to start with Triple H.
Okay.
So I guess DX. I've actually been going back and watching old Raws recently, so I've been seeing the rise of DX and how good DX was back then. Triple H being kind of the leader of DX and just how him and the rest of the members of DX were able to work the crowd all the time. The crowd was always hot for DX, and Triple H, I wouldn't say he carried DX, but if Triple H wasn't around for DX, I don't think they would have been as popular.
Agreed.
I think his in-ring work was better in the beginning of his career, maybe not before DX, but I think he found his place when he joined DX, and I think his in-ring work was the best around the early 2000s. I think he might have slowed down a little bit as he got later in his career, but that's not taking away the fact that he's multiple-time world champion, tag team champion, all that. Part of Evolution with Ric Flair, Randy Orton, Batista. He's always been relevant. He's come back from some injuries that some people would never be able to come back from. He's still doing great stuff now. He's NXT. You can mention all the stuff he's done with NXT now, which I guess could be a factor. I don't know if that factors into him as a superstar, but just his mind for the business, and he knows what he's doing, obviously, if he has NXT so successful. And
also his passion to see the product succeed.
Yeah, I don't think there's any reason why Triple H shouldn't be considered for this type of list.
Oh, absolutely.
Every element of him is
no doubt
above average.
He will be a multi-time Hall of Famer, maybe even a 3-time Hall of Famer, and would deserve it. So what he's done for the business overall, not many people can match.
Yeah, and you hear people say sometimes how he was selfish and didn't put people over, but he was in the prime of his career then, and he's done enough for guys to get people over, in my opinion. That's why Triple H is my number 6 pick. And moving on to number 5. So I think, Jimmy, you're number 5 first.
My number 5 will be another person that's from, kind of like when I was growing up. And you guys probably don't know. He's a Hall of Famer. My number 5 is Ravishing Rick Rude.
What did I tell you, Josh?
Well, you thought it was going to be his first.
Well, no, I said it was going to be on the list.
All right.
And rightly so on my list.
Yes, I would agree with that. He's not on mine, but...
Well, you'd have to have been watching him in the era that he wrestled, right? Just if you go watch, how he entered the ring and how and the things he said, like he'd come down to the ring and he goes, You know, if he was coming to like, you know, New York, he'd be like, I like all you fat, overweight New York sweat hogs to keep the noise down while I take my robe off and show the ladies what a real man looks like. He would. That's how he came to the ring. Like, he personified like arrogant, cocky,
An asshole, basically.
yeah,
Yeah. But
great. He had a great physique. He was a very good technical wrestler. He had a great feud with Jake the Snake Roberts. If you go back and watch these, he actually was going after Jake Roberts' wife. I mean, just the things they did for that time were great. And he also, again, another one managed by Bobby Heenan for a while. He used to do things with his trunks, like put pictures of his opponents on his trunks. And when he was the Intercontinental Champion, he put the Intercontinental Championship on his trunks. He had Jake Roberts' wife on his trunks and certain area of his trunks. Just his overall character, I think, was great for his time. And you guys not watching it then, of course, I can understand why he wouldn't be on your list. But for me, growing up, he was one of my favorites.
If I'm not mistaken, he was. So there was some controversy with him and being, I guess, in DX and then going to WCW. I don't know if you.
Yeah, he was in DX for a short time, and then he went to WCW and was actually part of the NWO.
Yeah.
He didn't wrestle during that time. He was kind of like just like a bodyguard type character, but he was a part of DX for a short time. There was controversy with the Hall of Fame a little bit, like why wasn't he involved?
I was going to say he should have been with DX at least.
But he is a WWE Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
Since passed away as well. A lot of these guys have passed away and they're not that old. But he was a part of the NWO for a little while. Not active as a wrestler, but to me, one of the greatest characters of his time.
We're on number 5, right?
Yeah, number 5.
Yeah, number 5. So number 5 for me is The Undertaker. I was debating putting him higher, but I'll explain why. So first of all, my favorite version of The Undertaker is definitely the Ministry Undertaker. He was at his most menacing and I guess scary back then with the Ministry. The stuff he was doing, that was like hanging people on crosses and tying nooses around Gangrel's neck and stuff.
Which they wouldn't get away with now.
No, absolutely not. He was definitely pushing the envelope back then.
With Stephanie McMahon on a cross.
Yeah, just crazy stuff he was doing, character work. Just the character, when I talked about Kane character-wise, the character of The Undertaker is, I would say, the best character of all time. He's managed to stay relevant as The Undertaker. He hasn't had, he did go to the badass for a while, but he was still The Undertaker. He hasn't had to change himself too much. He stayed relevant. He was always good in the ring for his size.
For 30 years, just about.
Yeah. Since he debuted, he's always been at least in the talks and hasn't been forgotten since then. The reason I didn't put him higher is because, like I said with Kurt Angle, his recent few years, not that it takes away from his legacy, but just the way I've been thinking about, like recently, how the streak was broken. I don't ever think the streak should have been broken.
I agree.
That's another topic.
I agree.
And ever since the streak was broken, even maybe a little before that, he's definitely obviously slowed down, but I like him losing to Roman Reigns.
53 years old.
Yeah, but just not his fault, but like him losing to Roman Reigns, some of his more recent WrestleMania matches, the match with Goldberg. That's why he's not as high on my list, but that's definitely not taking away anything that he's done in his career.
Okay,
Great pick. There's no arguing that pick with The Undertaker being in anyone's top 10.
Yeah.
Josh, you stole everything. All the words out of my mouth. My number 5 is also The Undertaker.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, basically everything you said, I think I do like the American Badass Undertaker. I did watch a lot of wrestling from that era, so that might be why I like that the most. A lot of people say that American Badass Undertaker was, terrible. I personally disagree with that. It was a nice change of things for him. It's definitely cool how he came out on motorcycles and he was just a badass.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and you really took everything I was going to say.
Well, that's okay. If it's the same pick, then...
Great, guys. Number 4?
Yep.
B?
Me, are you ready?
You started with number 5, right? Or did I?
Or Rick Rude was your 5, wasn't it?
Rick Rude was my 5. Oh, you're on number 5, B. Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, you're number 5. Oh, you just did that.
Yeah.
So now,
Excuse us, guys.
So,
hey, it's Sunday afternoon. I'm starting to get up there in the years, so
we're at number 4.
I'm not that old. Come on.
Okay, so my number 4 is Randy Orton.
Okay.
watching Randy Orton from 2012 up. I think that was great. I watched also a lot of wrestling from his era when he was feuding with like Vince, Triple H, Stephanie, and Shane.
Oh yeah.
That was very good.
Like when Triple H went to his house.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
great.
like, when he punted Vince McMahon.
Yeah, that was a good
He's-
time for
That
Orton.
was, I think that was my favorite Randy Orton. He was great in Evolution. The Legend Killer is amazing. He had some great Intercontinental title matches with Mick Foley. Some great hardcore matches. Great character, and he's one of the smoothest wrestlers in the ring. And he's definitely okay with putting people over and not maybe
Yeah, just
and
look
not
at
burying people.
Look at Jinder Mahal.
Yeah.
He won his first world championship for Randy Orton.
Yeah.
So I agree.
Well, there's something to be said for Randy Orton. He's one of the few, I think, that will be on all three of our lists. I already spoke of Randy Orton from my pick and then Josh's, so I really can't add much more, other than he absolutely belongs. So, my number 4 is Shawn Michaels. What can you say about Shawn Michaels, right? One of the greatest in-ring performers of all time. Started out as a tag team, the Rockers, with Marty Jannetty, and then betrayed Marty Jannetty on the barbershop, and another famous wrestling moment put him through the glass window of the barbershop. And then from there, his career skyrocketed. Part of DX. Again, I think him and Triple H carried the load for DX. Without either of them, I don't think that the DX faction would have been as successful as it was. I mean, I think they both needed to be there. Their chemistry is like no other, as far as two guys, kind of getting along in character, right?
Yeah.
Like the way their characters complemented each other. So, multiple time world champion. He's had some of the greatest matches. He, quote unquote retired Ric Flair. The Undertaker retired him, and I think one of the best WrestleMania matches ever.
Well,
One of the
With-
best matches ever, I would
Absolutely,
Well,
with him and the Undertaker.
Why do you say quote unquote retired?
Because Ric Flair wrestled again after that match.
say. He went to TNA.
He went
didn't
to he wrestled. Yeah,
Oh,
I mean,
well,
when
he,
you were,
he retired him from WWE.
Well-
I didn't even know he went to TNA.
yes, he did.
Yeah, that
so Ric
was-
Flair wrestled again. He had some feud with fun one with Jay Lethal. That was kind of
Oh, that was fun,
Yeah. But anyway, so Shawn Michaels. Who could argue? I'd love to hear somebody argue why Shawn Michaels would not be on a top 5 list or a
Yeah,
top
no.
10 list of all time. In the ring, he, when you watch him in some matches, the way he carried some opponents in his earlier in his career, that's one of the best things about Shawn Michaels was he could carry a match with some guys who, couldn't lace his boots. So, Shawn Michaels is and always will be probably one of the greatest of all time.
I agree. So for my number 4 pick, I have AJ Styles. Like B said a little earlier, most of the stuff he said I agree with, excuse me. I think for AJ Styles, he is, I don't know if you would say like the face of like indie wrestling. I don't know if that's fair to say, but
I think it definitely could be fair to say.
because he was in TNA, which is not the indies, but he never came up in WWE. He came up outside of WWE, made it huge outside of WWE, and then came into WWE already a huge name, and then I would say found even more success in WWE. He's one of the best wrestlers of all time, I would say. He's maybe not everyone's favorite in terms of character and on the mic, but even that, he's definitely gotten better as he's worked in WWE. He's had great stables like the Bullet Club, and then I guess they could have done more with him with Gallows and Anderson in WWE.
They hope they still do.
Yeah, but
They still have a small chance to do that. A very small window of time before.
yeah, AJ's getting older, but I haven't seen him slow down in the ring. He's had some of his best matches of his career in WWE.
I know he signed a new contract,
Yeah.
so he'll be around a few more years.
So only from here he's going to put on more classic matches, and hopefully he knows when his time is up and his career stays as strong as it is now.
Yeah, can't argue with AJ Styles again being on a list. Just on his in-ring ability alone, he belongs on a list. He's had some good feuds. He had, early on good feud with. I'm just thinking of WWE with John Cena. Short feud with Randy Orton was pretty good. So I really couldn't argue this one at all.
All right, moving on to number 3.
Okay, so am I starting? No, wait. I didn't.
Did you say you're 4 already?
Yeah.
Yeah, you said 4.
Yeah, all right.
Who
So
start?
number
And then I
3.
said 4. Who starts with 3?
Josh.
Me or
Yeah,
Josh?
Josh.
I'll start with 3.
Okay.
My number 3 pick, we just talked about him, Shawn Michaels.
Okay.
So you and I watched Shawn Michaels in different stages of his career. Maybe not so different, but we started watching him at different times. So I kind of caught him. I caught him when he was maybe slowing down at the tail end of his career, and even then, he put on some of his best matches at the end of his career, like you said with The Undertaker.
Yep.
I always noticed about Shawn Michaels, he was always able to sell for his opponents so well. He made everyone.
Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, he made. Well,
What I said about carrying opponents.
yeah, he always made who he was in the ring with look like $1 million.
Yep.
And I think something we forgot to talk about for some of these guys is influence. Just look at Sweet Chin Music, and now look at the Super Kick.
Oh my
and
God.
How popular the Super Kick is now.
Too popular.
Yeah, I would agree with too popular. It's just like a beginning of the match move now. It should be a finisher in my opinion, but
Well, Dolph Ziggler uses it as like his secondary
Yeah,
finisher
yeah.
sometimes, but
Shawn
other
Michaels.
than that,
Well, I could equate that to the DDT, and Jake Roberts
same
kind of
thing.
inventing the DDT, and now it's just used as a regular move.
So Shawn, like you said with DX, him and Triple H are just a perfect pairing together. They always worked well together in the ring with each other and even against each other. And I'm sure any wrestling fan you talk to would agree with Shawn Michaels being one of the best of all time.
No doubt. B?
Josh, you're making this easy for me. My number 3 was also Shawn
Oh
Michaels.
wow,
It's weird that we all had them like within a place of each other.
So yeah, his matches with The Undertaker definitely stand out for me. Some of the greatest matches of all time. One of the greatest storylines too, with everything, and then him getting retired by The Undertaker, and then him coming out of retirement again.
yeah, that was a little questionable, but who doesn't come out of retirement?
Right. If you get offered money, then I guess, yeah. But let's not talk about that. Let's talk about
And what he's
everything-
doing for NXT now.
Yeah.
Just like him and Triple H
Yeah.
transitioned over to NXT as, I guess, best friends from DX to now. So
Yep.
Okay, so am I starting with number 2 now?
No, I'm on number 3, boy.
Oh,
You forgot
sorry.
me.
No.
we're getting out of order
So
here.
my number 3 is Stone Cold Steve Austin. He came into the WWE as. Do you guys know what his first character was in the WWE?
Wasn't it the Ringmaster?
The Ringmaster.
Yep.
Yep. And it was with the $1 Million Man. He had the million. So the Ringmaster was a not a real good gimmick for him. Before that, he was in ECW. Before that,
Yeah.
Then before that, he was in the NWA, and he was stunning Steve Austin, and he had long blonde hair actually.
Yeah, I remember that.
And then when he came to, does anyone know when the coin flipped for Stone Cold Steve Austin?
It was,
Yep, it was
King of the Ring,
96.
and he cut the promo, right?
Well-
and he basically just, when he won King of the Ring,
Well, there was a match. There was a certain match.
was it Bret Hart?
It was against Bret Hart, where Bret Hart had him in the sharpshooter. He was bleeding all over the ring.
Yeah,
he,
I
when he
remember
passed
that.
out, he wouldn't give up, and that kind of turned it. And he cut that promo I remember with Michael Hayes as the interviewer.
I just saw that earlier
And
today.
that was the Austin, Austin 316 says I just whooped your ass.
and that started maybe the most popular wrestler of all time.
You go look back at when that glass broke and his music started. Can you recall another wrestler getting a pop like he got?
No.
Every
time
too.
he came out.
Not just
Even
on-
now.
Yeah.
Even now, if he comes around, he wasn't the best wrestler. I mean, he had a lot of injuries too, neck injuries, knee injuries.
yeah.
I mean, he wrestled in a lot of pain. There's no doubt one of, if not, right, he might have been the most popular wrestler that I've ever seen for his time. I mean, there was not a time where you heard silence when Stone Cold Steve Austin came out. His feud with Vince McMahon was legendary. The McMahon villain, against Austin, it was so entertaining to watch. Before he started getting injured too, he had great technical ability.
Oh, yeah.
The Stone Cold Stunner, great finisher. I mean, what a great finisher! The beer drinking, the middle fingers up in the air, just a total great character, and it's so fun to watch.
I don't think that the Attitude Era would be a thing if he wasn't around.
I think he created the Attitude Era.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's the reason that the Attitude Era. I think he's one of the main reasons that WWE beat WCW.
That's a,
Maybe
that's a
One
great-
of the yeah, that's a
main
good,
reason.
good call.
A small list of guys helped him out, but he was definitely at the top.
Yeah.
So that is my number 3. And
Okay,
now
so-
we'll move to number 2, and you will start
All right.
number 2.
So I don't think any of you guys are even gonna have this guy on your list, but my number 2 is Edge.
Okay, interesting.
So
Maybe overlooked by me.
Yeah, I agree.
this
ahead.
was, I think, maybe the third guy I came up with when I was thinking of the list. You look at everything he's done with Christian, the Brood, his multiple title victories,
Money in the Bank cash-ins.
yeah, his feuds with John Cena, his matches with Jeff Hardy. He did great stuff with Lita.
You just
as
like it because
manager.
of that live sex scene with Lita, don't you?
All right, buddy.
Who doesn't though? Everyone knows that.
All right, and then also, I lost my train of thought
Sorry.
here.
You're talking about
Is
him,
that
him and
easy for
Lita.
you? Is that easy for you to lose your train of thought? Sex, Lita. Which one was it?
Oh my God!
Okay.
All right, so I'm just
What about
like,
his return when he came back? I forgot about Royal Rumble. He came back and won, but that was
Yeah.
That's right. That was
One
a
of my
great,
favorite
great
returns.
moment.
I think that was the best Royal Rumble too.
Yeah, and I think that was Jericho left in the ring, right?
Yeah, Jericho was there.
So yeah, that's everything about Edge. He's got a podcast now. It's
Edge and
great.
Christian, the Edge and Christian
Edge and
show
Christian
on the
show is
WWE
hilarious.
Network.
It's just
Um,
and
He's
if you-
also an actor. He's on the show Vikings, and he does a great
Yeah.
job there.
So I think that he was definitely overlooked by some people, and I definitely think he deserves to be on this list at least.
Yeah, okay.
All right, so
I agree.
yeah.
So that's your number 2?
mhm.
My number 2 is Chris Jericho. He's yours too, isn't he? I see
Yeah.
the face. So I'll say so.
I
Here's
thought I was gonna get crap for putting me even on my
so
list.
well.
No way.
He does it. Hey, look, he's all about lists, right? So, I go back to Chris Jericho's. Go on the WWE Network and find I think it's Smoky Mountain Wrestling.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is.
And you could see where Chris Jericho kind of started out. Him and guys like Lance Storm, like early on in their careers, he had even great ability then. And then his early days in WCW, he was kind of like a cruiserweight. He was a total face. He was the Lionheart Chris Jericho. Very charismatic. WCW did not know how to manage Chris Jericho. He had a feud with Goldberg before, if you listen to Chris Jericho talk, he got fed up with WCW because they didn't do the right things with him. Tremendously talented there. He did win titles there. He was I think United States Championship a few times when he was in WCW with them. His whole debut in the WWE was, I remember clear as day, and The Rock standing in the ring, and who is it, and the Y2J countdown, and his wrestling ability. I mean, he's technically, I think, one of the best of all time.
I agree.
His ability to reinvent himself is one of the best of all time, I think.
I think I would say the best.
I mean, the way he molds his character and reinvents himself. We often talk about guys that are not unable to adjust their character or to reinvent themselves. This is a guy that's done it so many times, and I think he's been successful
He's never gotten stale to me.
every time he's done it,
Yep.
right? And talk about all his multiple world titles and intercontinental titles, and just his overall run in the WWE is one of the best of all time. And now he's with AEW, and he's going to wrestle for the first AEW World Championship, which maybe he'll win. But look at his character there now, right? Is like, you people better thank me for that. Like, just he's reinvented himself once again, and he's almost 50 years old. So.
And he's still he hasn't really lost a step with his in-ring work.
He was almost my number 1, just because of
I considered it.
the total package that he is, right? Just the in-ring ability, the mic skills, the character, the way he is with the fans, the way he's interacted with people, the whole, even recent him and Kevin Owens thing, just just amazing. So I think number 2 is a good spot for him, for me anyway. And I guess you, right, Chuck?
Yeah, number 2. I don't have much to add to what you said. Like you were talking about, he got a clipboard and a scarf to be 2 of the most popular things.
And a light bright jacket.
Yeah. So, just the way he's able to just portray himself, like you said, reinvent himself. He's never gotten stale. Every character he's played has been massively popular. One of the best in the ring, one of the best on the mic, obviously. And now he's going to be the face of a brand new wrestling company, which has so much hype behind it. So I almost put him at number 1, but we'll talk about that in a second. So that's all our number 1 picks.
Wait,
Right.
did you go number 2 yet? Did we do your number 2?
Yeah, Edge.
So who's first on number 1?
You want me
Me?
to go? Or
I think it's me.
okay.
Before you do that, I wrote down a few guys who I was going to consider to be on the list.
Okay.
At any spot, I just didn't put them on. Do you have any thoughts of guys you were considering and
Well,
for whatever reason?
You know, now that we went through these first 9 guys, you know, Edge would have been someone that I may have considered. Daniel Bryan would have been something I may have considered. AJ Styles. You know, John Cena's not on my list. Maybe he could have been on my list. So there are a few guys that if I really think about it that would have been considered. But I really went with, you know, the guys that came to my mind first, right? It didn't take me a lot to think about why these guys would be on my list. There could have been several other guys. Bret the Hitman Hart. He
Yeah.
could have been on the list. I don't think he's been on any of our lists. Maybe he's number 1 for someone. I don't know. Kane. So yeah, there are a bunch of people that I probably could have put on my list. Did you want to mention the guys that you...
Oh, sure. I'll mention them real quick. Just guys, just based off what we were talking about, guys who maybe I forgot about, or guys who I didn't really grow up on, but I know of their legacies. I have The Rock, Edge, Bret Hart,
The Rock, yeah.
and Steve Austin. I probably would have put Bret Hart on the list. I just didn't grow up on him, so I can't talk about him that much. But yeah, those 4 guys could have easily been on it. They probably could have replaced, maybe not replaced, but they could have been fit into any of these slots as well.
So for me also, I didn't really think about like honorable mentions, but Eddie Guerrero,
Yeah, I was
he's
thinking about
definitely
him.
one. Had a great career, and his character was amazing. The cheating and just
Yep.
yeah.
Lie, cheat, and steal. So yeah, so there were some others that I thought of. There was a very controversial person that was in my head that I,
Yeah,
just because of his in-ring ability, Chris Benoit, right? I mean, I know.
I think he has to be mentioned just based
Yeah,
off
just off his you know, his life is tragic and what he did was awful. But man, he's one of the best wrestlers of all time.
Yeah, Chris Jericho talks about that a lot on the podcast. He knows
it's tough.
what
I mean, and I watched him. You know,
Yeah.
when he won the World Heavyweight Championship, that was one of the most genuine moments during at a WrestleMania that I
Him
that
and
I
Eddie
remember.
celebrating together.
Absolutely.
it's a shame
but-
how his life and Eddie's life played out.
Yeah, it terrible. You know, so you're right. Jericho does talk about it a lot. WWE won't acknowledge him at all.
I
agree with that.
I don't think they should
and
either.
right, I agree. But for pure wrestling standpoint,
Yeah, pretend
if
none of
that
that
ever happened, he
happened.
would have been on my list.
Yes.
That's
Right?
fair.
But I left him off out
Yeah.
of respect for what happened.
That's fair. Yeah.
So, number 1. You guys probably know who my number 1 is because I haven't mentioned him yet.
Wait. Oh yeah, I got it.
So my number 1 for me is the Undertaker.
yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay.
I watched the Undertaker debut, right? Like I saw him debut, and the reaction when he debuted was like, wow, for that time he was just his presence and just what he was able to do over his long career. He didn't really need to reinvent himself too much, but he adjusted for the times.
Yeah, he tweaked his character.
He tweaked
just a
his
little
character. Think about any time you watched wrestling, or I've been to wrestling as I have. Have you guys ever seen him in person? Maybe Josh.
That's a good question,
I don't know.
actually.
I know I have a
I'm
few.
sure
I
I have.
haven't.
bit. I think I might have. I just can't remember when.
I mean, just that whole, experience of his entrance is.
I don't
name-
think I have actually.
Name a better, more impactful entrance from any wrestler in history. I don't think there is one.
Yeah.
I know we
agree.
joke about how long it is now and stuff, but still, just from that perspective alone, his character, and he's actually a good wrestler. I mean,
Yeah, for his, like I said, his size.
during his prime, like the stuff he did was great.
Like
And
walking
he
the
was,
ropes.
very agile. Some of the stuff that later on in the career were, disappointed me greatly. Right? I mean, the ending of the streak I thought was a huge mistake. The second loss to a WrestleMania, Roman Reigns, was another huge mistake. And most recently, the match with Goldberg. I mean, it was brutal, right? So
Worst match of his career.
does the
Worst
Under-
match of both of their
does
careers.
the Undertaker end his career on that match with? I don't think so. I think he'll have a final match, maybe at this coming WrestleMania. I don't know with who yet. I think I brought up a certain scenario on another podcast.
We talked about this briefly on
yeah,
another episode.
But the match to me would have to be very well scripted, rehearsed, right, so that it ends the proper way, right. Like I said, I'd love to see a triple threat match at WrestleMania with The Undertaker, Brock Lesnar, and Roman Reigns, the only two guys that beat him, and him winning that match, cleanly over someone. That to me would be the best way for The Undertaker to go out. So WWE, if you're listening to me at all,
I'm sure they are.
That's my creative stance on
Yeah.
how you should end The Undertaker's career, because if it ended now, I don't think it's a good legacy for my number one. I'm sure he would be on the list for the greatest of all time for a lot of people. Just his career spanned over 30 years, and he's been on top. I know over the past many years he's only been a part-time wrestler, but during his prime, he was the top guy, and he was the measuring stick, as they would call it, and he was the big dog, and it was his yard. So Roman Reigns did steal that from him, because he owned that ring for over 20 years.
Yep.
Also, one more thing I wanted to say. I was thinking about more honorable mentions for my list. Batista,
Yeah, I considered him too, but
Ric Flair.
Yep.
It's amazing that Ric Flair wasn't. I thought about him on my list, and I just.
You see, but I've never
You and I both watched him when he was older. We didn't.
I don't think I've ever watched him wrestle
You didn't
unless
see
it
him
was
in
pre-taped from the network.
the late 2000s, maybe.
No.
I'll tell you why he wasn't on my list. It's because when I watched wrestling as a kid, before the WCW and WWE wars started, Ric Flair was part of the NWA, and that's when he was with his prime with the Four Horsemen. And I did not watch NWA. I was strictly kind of a WWF guy. So when he was in WCW and was in the WWF, it was a little bit past his prime for me. So I can't, if I maybe watched him throughout his entire career, I would have definitely had a different opinion. I'm sure if people are going to comment, they're going to be like, what are you guys, nuts, not having Ric Flair or Dusty Rhodes on your list?
Yes.
Well, I didn't really watch those guys. And when Dusty Rhodes came to the WWF, they tried to make a mockery out of him, which was a damn shame.
Yeah. Okay. My number one pick, I went with the Beast, Dan Severn. No, I'm just kidding. That's a running joke between us.
Oh, God. Does that people like, who?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My number one pick is John Cena.
Wow.
Whoa.
Is it because you shook his hand?
Well,
Come on.
maybe a little bit. No.
Did he give you a little extra rub on the hand? What's going on here?
I have John Cena at number one because
I think for your time, maybe, go ahead.
Yeah.
he would be like the Hulk Hogan of when I grew up. Like, I think if you go on the street and ask 100 random people, like when you think of WWE, who do you think of as a wrestler? Most of them are going to think of John Cena, I would say.
Now, yes.
Little kids, older people, everyone knows John Cena. Everyone knows who he is and what he does. I would say that his in-ring work, maybe not the best, but I don't know. I think we talked about John Cena I don't know if we talked about him on an episode, but he's definitely gained my respect, especially recently when he did the U.S. Open Challenge, the run with AJ Styles. He was pulling out some new stuff that he's never done, like stunners and sunset flips and stuff. And it looked like he was really trying to improve himself and earn the respect of the fans. And I think he did with a lot of people, me included. So that redeemed him in the in-ring category. Obviously, one of the best on the mic in terms of like charisma and connecting with the fans. One of the best, if not the best. He's always been relevant. He's always been at the top, if not number two, maybe. And I just think that even if you consider everybody, like if you would consider Hulk Hogan and stuff, John Cena has to be up there with guys like Hulk Hogan and Steve Austin.
So I agree. I chose not to put him on my list because I tried to look at my era more, I guess, because of the nature of our podcast.
Mm-hmm.
But John Cena, there's no doubt. I mean, garnering a reaction from the crowd, one of the best. I hope his career isn't over. I know he's making movies. He is tied for 16 times. Does he want to stay there? Who knows? But just when he comes out, his whole the crowd starts immediately on him. You know,
that's one thing I forgot to mention. He's always gotten a reaction, whether it's good or bad.
Yep. And I guess you could say that about Roman Reigns now, right? I mean, we'll have to look back at him at some point and see how that goes. But yeah, great pick, Josh, for number one. So, B, I mean, are you gonna screw us with your number one pick, or are you gonna keep in the tradition of picking someone good for your number one?
I've been thinking about this one, like, even before we came up with this idea. It has taken me like a very long time to figure it out. So my
Hornswoggle?
No, you're close. My number one pick is actually Tensai.
All right, guys, that wraps up.
All right, we're done for today. We'll see you.
All right, so no, my number one pick is Triple H.
Okay.
I mean, where do I start with? Like Josh said, there's so much about Triple H. He started off as a snob from Greenwich, Connecticut.
Hunter Hearst Helmsley.
And look at the way he reinvented himself. He has probably the dumbest name in WWE.
Let me ask you a question about Triple H.
Yeah.
It's not really dumb. It's
Triple H.
Do you remember what his original name was when he debuted in WCW? What they went with?
It wasn't Hunter Hearst Helmsley.
I know what
WCW,
it is.
Josh?
Terror Rising or something.
Terror
I forgot how they
Rising.
spelled it, but...
Not terror, Terra Rising. Okay? That was his WCW, original gimmick in WCW. So now you can see why he didn't stay there long. So go ahead, sorry.
So, you look at the way he's reinvented himself from Hunter Hearst Helmsley to a badass named Triple H.
The game.
Yeah. And then you have the whole thing he did with Randy Orton, everything he's done with NXT, DX.
He actually fake married Stephanie before he really married Stephanie.
Yep.
It was a part of a storyline.
One of the funnier people too on the roster for the Attitude Era time. Great matches with The Rock. There was one thing I was gonna say about him. I forgot what it was.
So while you're thinking, I will say that I regret not having him on my list. If I were to redo my list, I think I might replace someone with Triple H, because he's definitely one of the best of all time, all around, and just his contributions to the business alone. Look, I mean, thank God, right, for NXT right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, and he's responsible for that. So just for that alone, he deserves to be on the list, right? Because that's the best thing going in wrestling right now,
mm-hmm.
and it's his, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's his baby. So, he had a lot to do with the creation of the WWE Network. Triple H has got a genius mind for wrestling, and hopefully he'll get more say and power with main roster stuff, soon, right? I mean, I that's what I'm looking at for Triple H. His career has been amazing.
And so the thing I was thinking about, it was around 2015 with Seth Rollins, The Authority.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of my favorite times to watch in wrestling. I know I say that a lot, but there is some pretty good time periods in the network stuff I've watched, and I think that they made Seth Rollins work as that character so well, and how he transitioned into this character is very good. I think that's it for all of us.
Yeah, so I think we all had good lists. I think different, based on generational knowledge, which is, I think, really good, which I think makes our perspective in this podcast pretty good, I think. So that's our show. Be sure to, again, follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Podcast3G. Be sure to like and subscribe and comment. I'd love to hear feedback on this one, especially. I'd love to hear, positive, negative, just feedback in general. We're always looking for the feedback, and we're looking for suggestions on topics for our future shows, which we've definitely got some lined up. But this was one of the ones that we wanted to do first as far as, ranking and talking about. So with that being said, thanks for listening, and we will talk to you soon.